Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit about Mansfield Steiner School and our secondary education program. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land on which the school stands. I'd like to acknowledge the Taungurung people, the traditional custodians of this land, and recognise their continuing connection to the land, water and community. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. Mansfield Steiner School is 34 years old. It is a kinder to year 11 IB World School and a Steiner School. And next year will be a kinder to year 12 school. It's an inclusive, sustainable and unique school with a community of passionate teachers and students who are committed to learning and supporting each other and working together. Tonight is an opportunity for you to meet some of the community. We provide a nurturing environment where students can thrive and have opportunities on many levels to find their inner and their outer potential. Steiner Education is 100 years old. It's the fastest growing education movement in the world. There are over 1,000 schools in over 65 countries throughout the world. It's an education for global citizenship, of which Mansfield Steiner School now is a part. It provides students with an opportunity to foster courage, imagination, resilience, enthusiasm to be positive and effective contributors to society. There are many things that are different about our school, and there are many things that are similar to every school that thrives or strives for excellence. And tonight's an opportunity to hear about the similarities and distinctiveness of Steiner Education and in particular Mansfield Steiner School. So the teachers will come up and introduce themselves, and they will answer the questions that you asked either on registration, and if you have further questions, please use the chat function to post your questions, and you may nominate whether you would like a teacher. And we are very fortunate to have a student here from our pioneering Year 11 IB class to answer your questions. So I hope you enjoy the evening, and please don't hesitate to ask questions. So our first teacher is Josh.
Hi everyone, my name is Josh. I'm the Year 7 Guardian this year. And to give you a little bit of a rundown of what Year 7 is like, the students leave Year 6 when they're looking at Rome, and in Year 7 they start to look at the fall of Rome in the Middle Ages. And this is quite apt in a lot of ways because of the, as I'm sure a lot of you know as parents, a lot of the development that students go through during this time can be quite an upheaval, quite a change and quite challenging. And so it's quite appropriate that we look at things like the Middle Ages and the fall of Rome and try to relate that to the students and try to get them to understand what's happening about themselves at the same time. We also look into the sciences. We look at the human body and the life processes, circulation, respiration and things like that. We look at physics. We look at chemistry. We looked at algebra and geometry. And so all those subjects we look at in main lessons, and then of course we have our subjects after main lesson in which we go through and practice some more of those concepts in a shorter time frame than the main lessons.
So Josh, can I ask a question? What if a student is academic, sporty, but just not creative?
Well, starting with sports, there are timetabled sports or PE lessons every week where the students can take part in a range of games and activities. And then every week there's an afternoon where students have sport for the whole afternoon. They join other year levels and we all play games together. For example, we've been playing ultimate frisbee this year as well as touch rugby. I'm from New South Wales, so I thought I'd teach them a new game. And yeah, plenty of opportunities for them to engage in lots of sports. If they're academically inclined, there are huge opportunities for them to to expand themselves academically through the creativity that we do in our classroom. It's actually a huge advantage when students are trying to interpret something quite academic in a beautiful and creative way. It allows them to engage that work at a higher level than they would otherwise be if they're just taking notes.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. No worries, Fran.
Josh.
Thank you.
So as Josh said, Year 7 is all about the Middle Ages, and they have lots of great activities and lots of sporting activities. Year 7 is all about creating balance. They do everything from art to sport to academic work.
Evening, Fran. Evening, everybody.
So Seamus is our Year 8.
Yes, Year 8 Guardian, and I'm also the ICT teacher at school.
So Seamus, tell us a little bit about what's unique about Year 8.
So Year 8 is a fantastic year. We go off on our major camp for the Year 8, which is we head to the Northern Territory. It's a really good chance for students to step out of their comfort zone, go and explore one of the pioneering regions of Australia, as well as experiencing the culture and the people of our First Nations. They get to also see some of the fantastic scenery that's there as well. However, the major thing that happens in Year 8 is the Year 8 project. This is a year-long project undertaken by each and every student off their own volition. They work outside of school hours to complete a task. That includes planning, that includes budgeting, that includes any and all creative aspects that they have to do. And then on top of that, they have a night towards the end of the year, which we've just come to and just been and gone, where they present their work that they completed for the whole year. And this can be super creative things, such as writing your own pieces of music and recording them. It can be slightly more morbid things, like creating a sheep skeleton that you've found and hanging it back up, which was very awesome to see. And it can also be physical challenges as well, such as going on a unaided 4-day hike across the high country.
Seamus, your other role is with ICT and
Yes.
technology. Can you tell us a bit about how that works?
Yeah, so the Steiner curriculum is really unique in that it is one of the only alternative to a mainstream ICT curriculum. It really tries to explore what it is about computers that draws us to them. And in doing so, it really kind of has two fundamental questions. And the first one is, what is it? How do I kind of like, how does it work? And then the second one is, how can I master that piece of technology? And so everything that we do, everything that we experience comes back to one of these two questions. And ICT essentially has two main skills, and that is being able to control a mouse and be able to type on a keyboard. And all other types of applications that we do with a computer come back to these two fundamental skills. And so in Year 7, it really kind of pivots around these two important questions and these two fundamental skills where we, and it culminates where we take apart computers and start to look on the insides and compare that to what we see out in nature and it's within ourselves as well. And we start to explore aspects of short-term and long-term memory. And then in Year 8, we build upon these skills. We start to do things such as designing user interfaces. And we also look at the beginnings of zero and its importance to computing with binary and stuff like that. And then with the Year 9 and the Year 10, we start to become a lot more physical. We build a computer using a Raspberry Pi. And then in Year 10, we explore what it is that actually makes the computer think with the building of a binary adder, which is just essentially the brain of the computer.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
And certainly the Year 8 project is a highlight of the year. And a recent presentation did show the diversity and the imagination of the students and the determination during a difficult time to complete their project. Okay. So Kate is our chemistry science teacher as well as our wellbeing coordinator. So Kate, what does it mean within the Steiner School to be the Wellbeing Coordinator?
So I work across the entire school in this role as Wellbeing Coordinator. And in the primary school, it's about supporting the class teachers because they have a very, very close relationship with the students and their families as they come up through those year levels. But as we reach the secondary school, there's a branching out of the students into specialist areas. So we have more contact with different teachers. And so my role in the secondary area is to provide both wellbeing classes for the actual classes from class 6 up to year 11 at this stage, and to help the students learn about their own wellbeing and the skills that they require to move forward successfully in life. And then I also work one-on-one with students if they have any difficulties at any time. I help to support them through that. Sometimes it's just a matter of having a chat. Sometimes it's much more further support that requires scaffolding through other staff members, through their own parents, and just really trying to advocate for them as best as possible to really support them here at school and to make sure their time at Steiner is a really enjoyable one. I think that the greatest role that I have is that connection between the parents, the staff and the students, and making sure that everyone's really enjoying their time at school. I strongly believe that children just won't learn if they feel unsafe, and I think that if we can help students to feel safe, then the learning that comes from that through all the classes that we do is much more worthwhile.
Thanks, Kate.
No worries.
So what are the challenges and how are they managed?
Yeah, so I suppose one of the more complicated areas is when there's a bit of a breakdown in relationships with students or staff and students. And so we have a pretty well-practiced restorative practice that we do here, which has worked well over the years. And we definitely try to make sure that that's a very active restorative practice that we engage with as often as needed. And we certainly make sure that if there's any problems, that communication is the key to solving all of that. So we try to make sure that we're providing the students with a wellbeing literacy and also the families with what they need to be able to move through any areas of conflict. Thanks, Fran.
Kate. Thank you, Kate. So Kate is the Wellbeing Coordinator, a very important role because the school is based on relationships and managing relationships is a crucial part of her role. And now we have Brooke.
Hi, Fran.
Now, Brooke, what is the Year 9 Outdoor Education Program and what is the point of such a program for a Year 9 student?
Yeah, so I'm the Year 9 Outdoor Education teacher here at Mansfield Steiner School, and if you have a child in Year 9, you'll probably understand that it can be a challenging year for them. They're starting to develop as a young adult, but we need a few steps to get there. So the point of the Year 9 Outdoor Education program is it sort of marks the end of their childhood and the beginning of their adulthood by giving them an extensive amount of responsibility by building on their ability to be out in the outdoors. So it's preparing them for Year 10, 11 and 12 by getting their organisational skills up, by getting their communication skills up as a class, their physical ability, and also their intellectual and emotional understanding of themselves and their year level group. The program aims to develop a deep sense of place within the natural environment. So we live at the foothills of the Buller Howard area. So we take them up into the bush and we go on a range of different trips, including hiking, rafting, and just being out in nature really. And It also, we integrate their main lessons into the camps. So if they start a year, they have a main lesson on the coastal environment. So we take them over to the coastal area, and then they get to actually see what they've been learning in class. So it's really an applied learning experience right there and then, putting meaning to what we're learning in the classroom by taking them outside. One of the big practical elements of the Year 9 Outdoor Education program is preparing them for the Year 10 cultural exchange, by being away from home, understanding what they need as an individual, but also preparing them for adulthood and university, so that when they do, or like future, just their future post school, so they know how to look after themselves, they know how to clean up after themselves, they know what they need as an individual, and how they can, I guess, communicate well within a group.
So one of the things that Brooke touched on was the Year 10 cultural exchange, and last year our first Year 10 students were fortunate to have an overseas trip. This year we may not be, or next year rather, so fortunate with COVID and international travel. So perhaps Sue can give an outline as well about what our plans are for a cultural exchange in the coming year.
Hi Fran, so straight into it.
Yeah.
In planning at the moment, in these times of COVID, we're looking at a national exchange, and we're putting the parts together at the moment. The parts are coming together, and it looks very much like we'll head into the Northern Territory and spend some time in an Indigenous community, which will really expose and build on the students' Year 8 Northern Territory trip, by spending a little bit more time integrated into a community of Indigenous Australians. And then from there, we will head over into Queensland, where the students, I think, very fortunately will board an Sydney to Hobart sailing yacht and learn to sail in the Whitsundays. But the educational component of that is that they'll be working closely with climate scientists who are actually working on the reef, looking at what is happening to our reef under climate change conditions. So as well as an adventurous skill learning activity, also being involved in some pretty cool and real climate science. And then to wrap up and really bring the exchange experience as close as we can in a national exchange, they'll head to the Cairns Steiner School, who we're in consultation with and hoping to have an exchange where our students will spend some time in the rainforest environment, and perhaps their students will come down here and enjoy our alpine environment later in the year. So exciting, I think, as an alternative.
Yeah, exciting plans ahead. So as Sue, as being the secondary school coordinator, all those exciting plans, but what does a typical average day in the senior school look like?
Yeah, well, it's my great joy to make the timetables. Hopefully Emma will probably flash that up soon. It's just a Year 7 timetable from semester 2 this year. And I think one of the key differences, as Fran's mentioned, is that the morning is taken up with main lesson. It's the first 105 minutes of the day. And it's a thematic lesson and an integrated learning. So it has a theme. And so for Year 7, the voyages of discovery, Arthurian literature, medieval history, these things form the banner of what will be taught in a main lesson. And students then spend 3 weeks. There's three week blocks in a term, or thereabouts, depending on the length of the term. And they're deeply immersed for that first 100 minutes in the thematic learning of the day, which is guided by, in Year 7 and 8, predominantly their class guardian, and then in 9, 10 by the subject teacher. and they make beautiful main lesson books, which you would have seen in that video. From there, a day looks typical to what a senior school in the mainstream might look like, is in that there are practice classes, maths, science, English, sport. You'll see BOTHMA on there, which is PE. And so there are, you know, things that use the head and the heart and the mind for the rest of the day in 50-minute blocks. So that's a pretty average day, as well as having guardian time. So each morning begins with guardian time and a meditative verse to really bring students into the day, you know, to move from the outside world into the space of learning. And then the day closes with a verse and some cleaning of the classroom as well. So it's a pretty average day at the school. Yeah. Okay. Oh. Right. Did you want me to talk about the rhythm of the term as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. The rhythm and the routine of the year for the senior school.
So one of the key differences that I've come to love and appreciate at the school is how the terms and the seasons are marked by festivals. I think it's unique to Steiner schools that the turning of the year involves the same festivals from lower primary up into the senior school, and that all students, including our IB senior students, are involved in marking the turning of the year through the seasonal festivals. And so it's a really joyful celebration where students again and again and again revisit the same themes of marking the season. And for me, in the small time I've been here, it's a really helpful way to feel your way through the year, which is a lovely marking of rhythm and routine. And then on top of that, the really practical marking of the year is done, you know, day to day with diaries and communication between guardian and student and home, being accountable to their homework and what needs to be done for school, as well as communication, anything, small things that need to be communicated from teachers through to home. And then by camps, which happen at the same time each year. Year 7s always go away in term 4 to Tasmania. Year 8s go away in term 3 to the Northern Territory, and Year 9s are away throughout the year. And you know, so far the Year 10s have been away in term 2, and the hope again this year for the term 2 Year 10 cultural exchange. So that's the feel of the year.
And what about plays?
Plays. Each year level does a play, and so in Year 7, Arthurian literature or medieval, you know, that feeling of history is investigated in a play, which is guided by the class guardian. In Year 8, the Year 8 students tackle Shakespeare with all its complicated language, and this is great for the Year 8 student who in general, you know, loves to mumble yes, no, maybe so, to get their heads around Shakespeare and present that to the school. And I love watching the Year 8 play. And 9 and 10 combine together to explore the comedy and tragedy year. So 1 year they'll combine to do a comedy, and 1 year they'll combine to do a tragedy. And that way, from 9 and 10, they'll have done both comedy and tragedy as they head into Year 11 and 12. It's a really important part of the year. Yes.
Cool, Sue.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah. The arts are a very important part of the Steiner curriculum. It's not just an add-on, it permeates every main lesson, whether it be science or maths or history. And it's valued, and especially the class plays, which do allow our students to stand in confidence and be able to speak confidently, as we'll prove later. Sue, welcome, Sue.
Hi.
So, what everybody wants to know, how's the IB 2020 going?
Well, I think that in what has been an exceptionally difficult year for education worldwide, that we've been travelling extremely well. It wasn't, we had one term under the belt and then remote learning hit Victoria, definitely. And yet we quickly were able to put together a remote learning program that was very successful. But of course, the beginning, the real beginning was at the tail end of last year, when the students had a bit of an immersion experience in the city of Melbourne, which I think we've been very fortunate, because certainly wouldn't be able to do that this year. And we actually stayed on campus at Melbourne University to give them a taste of what the tertiary world might offer. But tertiary education isn't necessarily every student's goal. It was also what opportunities were out there post-secondary education. And so we looked at other educational opportunities, and also had chances to see things like the State Library and institutions that exist, public institutions, to enrich our lives.
Okay, well, as the IB coordinator, what have been the challenges? And you mentioned remote learning, and the successes of IB.
Okay, well, I think a lot of the challenges actually took place last year, when we were still in our accreditation process, because the IB sets an extremely high standard for its world schools, which we as a small regional school had to certainly work hard to meet. And it was a big investment for the school, but one that was something that we have a great belief in, that the students here in regional Victoria and the students at a Steiner school should be able to continue on and complete their schooling in the way that they had begun it. And of course also to be able to welcome other students at other stages in their learning experience. So the investment in making sure that we could fulfil all of the requirements and the facilities that were needed for the IB, I guess one of the challenges and successes, as is so often the case, was staffing, because it's not always easy in regional Victoria to get just the right staff, and we have been exceptionally lucky. And because so much of Steiner education really focuses on the relationship between the student and the child or young adult, the quality of our staff has been exceptionally high. And I think even the students have to admit that they've been pretty fortunate in that. Another challenge has been, I guess, for the students to overcome the initial, I suppose, the increase in workload and the higher expectations from their middle school experiences of schooling, which often is experienced at the beginning of year 12 in a VCE curriculum. But of course, because the IB is a 2-year continuum, that already is happening early on in year 11, and they are already studying the texts that they will be examined on in their final examination in year 12. And they have already begun various topics and projects that they will be completing in year 12. And so that sense of gravity, I think that's a big step up, which I'm very pleased to say, if you had asked them how they felt about it in term 1 when they were grappling with these things, they would be struggling, and now they all have extremely well-honed organisational skills and are managing to self-regulate their workload and meet their various assessment tasks. So I think another challenge for us as a school is getting the message out into the wider community what what a wonderful opportunity it is to have access to a senior secondary education such as the IB. And I think that possibly a lot of people don't really realise what the IB involves, and for those people I encourage them to access some of the information available on this school's website, but also to go to the International Baccalaureate website and learn more about a system of education which Steiner's 100 years old, and the IB has been operating for 60 years, wanting to offer an internationally, globally relevant transdisciplinary, so in other words, that all of the different aspects of the different subject areas come together in a more holistic learning, which is, of course, why it was your choice, Fran, to offer the IB, because it's a wonderful marriage between the pedagogy of Steiner Education and where we end up with in the IB diploma.
And being very attached to Mansfield as a town and a community myself, that it really is great to be able to offer our students, or the students of Mansfield, another option in secondary education. It's great to, Mansfield's a great place to grow children and especially adolescents. So it's great to keep our young people in Mansfield and give them these great opportunities that are quite global, and have them well prepared to take flight after year 12.
Yes.
So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to, we're very fortunate to have Lockie, who is a member of our pioneering year 11 class and the IB. So welcome, Lockie, and thank you for coming tonight.
No worries, Fran. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so just a little bit about your experience at the school. You've been here a very long time.
Yeah, so I've been here since the very beginning. My mum used to bring me in playgroup, I think. And then I've gone through the whole system up until year 11 now.
And you must have had lots of friends from outside the school and compared what they've gone through. So can you tell any difference now between the experience of your education at Steiner School and particularly at Mansfield Steiner School than to your friends?
So I think some people have mentioned tonight that we've got the main lesson in the morning periods. I think that's something really interesting that Steiner offers, and it provides that kind of well-rounded kind of curriculum, and you learn a lot more about the humanities from that. So I think, as Josh said at the start, he did a lot of, or they're doing a lot of ancient history in year 6 and 7. So it's really good to have that opportunity to learn all of that as we move through the years. Yeah.
So you found that there's a connection between what you've learned in the previous years and what you're studying now? Is there any?
Yeah, so what do you mean by that? Sorry.
Oh, well, you mentioned history and now you're doing history and IB.
Okay, so yeah, that's a really good connection to have for the IB, kind of this background knowledge of everything. And it just provides a lot more to talk about in our history classes. And yeah, it gives us kind of head start for that moving into the IB.
So over your years now, what do we say? It was 12, 13 years at the school. What have been...
Something like that, yeah.
What have been the highlights?
Definitely, I think last year, the Slovenia trip, the cultural exchange that we went on to Slovenia. So we were over there for 10 weeks and I had the best time of my life. We met amazing people. It was amazing to experience that different culture and to kind of experience what it's like living away from home. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lockie.
Thanks, Fran. See ya.
So one of the questions always asked is that the school is very expensive, can't afford the fees. And we have a fee structure. Of course, the costs go up as you progress through the classes, but it's an all-inclusive fee. It covers even the trip to Slovenia. So the fees are really, you don't, after paying them, that's how it works. That we also offer scholarships to students and ways. We look for every way to support everyone so that they can come and have a great opportunity at the school. So we're going now, it's as everything, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, but we're going to show a few of our puddings. Our Year 11 class of 2020, who's speaking about their experiences at the school.
So Charlotte, you live locally on a small property, but that hasn't always been the case. There was a while there, even though you started early at this school, that you were living too far away and had some homeschooling. How did you feel after a few years when you came back here from homeschooling?
Yeah, although I really liked homeschooling, it was good to be on our farm and just, you know, having fun. Yeah. But I definitely missed being in a class with different people. So when I came back, you know, at first I was a bit nervous, hadn't been at school for a while, but it was really easy because, you know, our class has always been full of nice people. And now with our small class, it's really great going through the IB with people I'm so close to.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good to have them to support me.
So Freya, you began your Steiner journey in New South Wales at Byron Steiner, and it was only in Year 8 that you started here. Having been a Steiner student since the very beginning, what was the difference between your previous school and this school, if any?
I think the main difference was in teachers. We have so many of the same teachers here, and you really grow to a connection with them, and it just becomes really personal, and they really know you and know your strengths and weaknesses, so can really support you. Yeah, so that was probably the main difference, and also the class number of people in the class are a lot smaller. So you're just so much closer with everyone, which is great. I love that.
So you like having small numbers?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think you learn so much more about your classmates and know their strengths and weaknesses, so can support them.
So Lara, you're a recent acquisition, arriving last year, and you were at the local school.
Yeah.
What's one of the things that struck you in the early sort of weeks here as being different to what you were used to?
Well, I thought it would be quite different, obviously, because they're different schools, but it was pretty similar as far as teaching went. I mean, they taught with a lot more conversation, so they'd show you something and then you talk about it for a bit, rather than, I think, at the high school, we used to just write a lot more. And I mean, I like the conversation, it's quite good. It kind of cements things in your brain.
Okay, and then now you're in a class of only 7 students this year. How do you find that?
I really like it, actually. It feels more like a friend group because we're all really close than a class, so it's kind of just like going to school only with your friends rather than 20 other kids that you vaguely know.
So you're also a relative newcomer, but 2 years is quite a while in the life of a teenager. Yeah. Arriving at this school, how did you find your day-to-day experience differing from when you were at your previous school?
A lot is similar to what Lara has said about the small class, which I think is really good personally, because there's a lot more class engagement and class discussion, and I feel like it's a lot easier for the teachers to answer everybody's questions.
Obviously, you still have friends that are at your previous school and they're doing VCE. When you talk to them about your experiences doing IB, what do you think some of the major differences are?
I think VCE Year 11 is a little bit more easier and relaxed than Year 12, and Year 12 is more of a surprise. And then with IB, I think it's more challenging all in the 2-year course, but I think the material is more difficult, but it makes the exams a little bit easier.
Okay, well, I think it's a pretty good observation that you're straight into it in year 11 and you know it's a 2-year thing as opposed to year 12 being the big one.
Yeah, you get to kind of figure out your studying styles and what works for you.
So Grace has been here since kindergarten.
Yeah.
And you probably would be a fine example of what a Steiner education can do. What do you think has been your experience of learning at this school?
I'd say it's been pretty great for preparing me for the IB, especially because it's very international from the start. You learn about a lot of different cultures and religions and histories really early on. Mm-hmm. So it's really well-rounded, and the year 9 hikes I found really great because you get to develop a lot as a person and you learn all these practical skills.
Yeah. So you think all of the outdoor experiences that you had in year 8, 9, that they were quite important to how you experience things now?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. And also going forward, if I wanted to do more hikes, I'd be very comfortable doing them by myself.
Yeah.
Just because I've had so much experience in year 9.
You started off in regional Victoria in a local primary school and arrived here in grade 3.
Yeah.
What is it that you enjoy most about your schooling here?
I really enjoyed it, as Lockie was saying, that it's a very broad curriculum, so learning things for real life that integrated with stories and with the arts and with history, and I found that's a really fantastic way to learn for me. It gives an interest to the subject and a application that I can use. So yeah. And another big one would be the teachers. Coming from a school where even in younger classes you had multiple teachers, coming here you have a far more personal relationship with the teachers. They understand, as Freya was saying, where your weaknesses and your strengths are, and kind of understand you a bit more as a person, I think, rather than only as a student coming to learn content.
Yeah. And the IB, that's been a big thing this year. Yeah. Do you feel confident now in how you're managing your IB studies?
Yep, I feel I'm getting confident with it. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort. Just to stack up my work ethic in terms of schoolwork has been a big thing, I think, for all of us adjusting to that. But it's great to have a small class and a lot of support.
So one of the questions that has come through is, are the guardians the same each year? So is Josh always going to be the guardian of year 7 and Seamus of year 8? And one of the things about Steiner Education is not only do the students strive, teachers are encouraged to strive all the time. So one guarantee we make is that if you start off as guardian of year 7, you take the students to year 8, but it doesn't mean that you're recycled again. So staffing is what's happened, is what is happening at the moment. So we haven't made that decision, but certainly Josh will be the year 8 teacher. So year 7 guardian for 2021 will be their year 8 guardian in 2022. So I'd like to welcome Lockie back, because being a pioneering student, Lockie, you've been through all the trials and tribulations of paving the way for lots of students. So what advice are you going to give for the next cohort of students that are following in your wake?
Yep. So I think one of the main things is when you move into the new year 11, 12, you're suddenly overwhelmed with work and you feel a little bit kind of scared. One good thing about the IB is that work is the same. It doesn't go up and down a lot. it may a little, but not an extreme amount. So once you get into that rhythm of organizing everything, that stays the same, and you can kind of prepare yourself and prepare for all of that kind of things interrupting. Whereas I guess in BCE, you've got kind of sacks and things, which means you've got like a kind of build up and then a breakdown. So IB balances it out a bit better, I think.
And what about that thing that it's so academically rigorous? Is it above most people to do the IB, do you
Definitely not, no. I think it's kind of seen as better because all the private schools in Melbourne and kind of the rest of Australia, I guess, have those elitist programs, but that's not exactly what the IB is. It provides just a kind of unique and more academic and creative, all-rounded, again, kind of fit for a person, which is why it fits really well with the Steiner kind of philosophy.
So have you got any tips for organisation for those students who are looking ahead?
I guess one key one is just pay attention in class. That's something that a lot of people just kind of miss and they zone out a bit. One key thing is to just pay attention and maybe take notes is a good one. So you can revise and look back on later what you went over in those classes, and just make sure you understand all that you need to know.
So does the IB or Year 11 leave you time to do anything else outside of school?
Yeah, so I still do kind of extracurricular activities as part of the CAS. And of course, just in my own free time. So in term 3, I still do lots of skiing, although this season was a bit kind of weird with COVID. And I also like to do tennis. So I play tennis on Thursdays.
Right. All right.
Cool.
Thanks, Lachlan.
Well, thank you.
And now we have a big question about homework. So
Thanks,
I'd like
Fran.
to welcome Sally, and Sally is one of the IB teachers and teaches English.
I do. So it's always a vexed question, I think, how many hours of homework is expected with IB, and there's no clear-cut answer. So I sort of taking up what Lockie was saying, I think probably the key to it is being organised. Whenever I'm sort of thinking of when parents have asked me, you know, do you think my student should or my child should be doing IB or BCE? I have a great love of IB, so I would almost always say that. But it would be because I think they need to be capable of looking at each subject. So of course, there are 6 subjects within the course, and they need to be able to then a maths, a science, and then a humanities and English, and then their core subjects. So to be organised, to be able to open their minds to the possibility of all those disciplines is very important. And then the question of then how many hours? I think that we have a tendency to think that if they're just sitting at their desks for 3 or 4 hours a night, then that's going to be worthwhile. That's certainly not my experience. I would have thought if I had to pluck a number out of the air, it would be probably 2 hours a night. So I think the key thing is that I think we often think that too much homework is just not going to get a student anywhere. And I think the answer to that is it busy work? If it's busy work but not actually thinking carefully and constructively about what their goals are, then it's not worthwhile. So I would probably just recommend each student to talk to their teachers about what's required at particular times, and there will be times when there are certain assessments that perhaps some more work needs to be done, but generally my answer would be approximately 2.
Yeah, efficient time.
Yeah,
efficient
absolutely,
use of
using
time.
it, yeah, not just busy for the sake of busyness.
Okay,
Thanks, Fran.
Suze, what question do you have?
I have, well, one for me and one for you. This is the one for after mine. So mine was, do students do any work in the Mansfield community? This year, the Year 9 program is going through its 2nd iteration, and community service has been a part. Now, we had plans to go out and plant trees with land care and do track maintenance to kind of give service to the fact that we use those trails. Unfortunately, due to COVID, that didn't happen. So instead, we paired with Mansfield Council and we worked closely with them to develop a program where students were teaching older people how to navigate technology in the time of COVID, to do their shopping online, go to church via Zoom, and we had some really exciting outcomes there. Also, the students this year, again, paired with the Mansfield Council and the Youth Centre to run a small business on a social enterprise model. Again, interrupted by COVID, but we're coming out the other end of that. We had a few students who pushed through their businesses and given money back to the community, and then a couple of businesses that will come into the market at the end of the year. So yes, it's been really great to watch the students interact with the community. It's something our school does well, and lots of people comment on the fact that our students speak well to the members of the community and are part of it. So, thanks, Sue. So one of the things we haven't covered tonight is music, and music is a vital part of the Steiner curriculum from way back in kindergarten all the way through to the end of year 11 and 12. Every student is expected to do music. They have a half-hour individual lesson per week, and in the secondary they have a choice of instruments to play, from keeping on often the stringed instrument that they learned in primary school, or taking up a new instrument. So there's a lot of opportunity to cover a lot of instruments during their time at the school. They're also part of the choir, which they all really enjoy. So singing and music, the aim is that every student that leaves this school has a love of music and appreciation of music. So we have another question. We've got one late at the gate, so I'll bring it in again. This is a really quick one. So it's, do students do work experience as in the same as other secondary schools? It's actually a part of the curriculum to do work experience. It's something the Victorian government is keen for all Year 10 students to do, and it's a great thing to do. So yes, our Year 10 students do work experience placement. We also build it and integrate it into a main lesson where they build a resume and talk about communication skills while they're out in the workplace. So yes, in brief, we do work experience, and we do look at what that means within the Year 10 class.
And we don't really often offer options in secondary. We talk about electives.
Talk about electives, yes. So in Year 7 and 8, students are given exposure to lots of things, to music, to drama, to handcraft, to ICT, and they all do a similar thing. And then later on in schooling, Year 9's pretty busy with the Year 9 outdoor program, so Year 10 electives really come into play, and that's when students are looking perhaps to move and be immersed more in art with Sue as an elective, or into the music program with the music staff, and into the future as the school grows, possibly looking into technology and into what in the Steiner curriculum is called hard craft, so woodwork and metalwork. And again, as the school grows, that might filter down into the junior years as well.
Yep. But our main subjects, there's no option. We expect students to carry them all the way through, because we feel that at that age, they don't really have the ability to make decisions, to be dropping languages or other things. So we haven't covered that French is taught from prep to
Year 12.
IB, to Year 12.
Yeah.
So one more question. So I think we've come to the end of our evening, and thank you all for listening. I hope you've gained an insight into Mansfield Steiner School secondary program. I hope that the answers that we've given, just like in Steiner Education, creates more questions. And if you do have those questions, please contact the school and find out more about it. So there's lots of options. If you're interested in enrolments, to contact the school and to have trial days. But I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for listening. And thank you to all of our teachers and to Lockie for tonight.